live streaming on YouTube.
I'm like, I should have the link ready. Oh, here we go. I think we're on.
We are.
So, the most important thing to start off with is to mute your sound on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube as well.
Oh, okay.
If you've got YouTube open as well.
Okay, no.
Sound on that. So, the easiest way is just to not go on YouTube, but if you want to see all the comments as they go by. Welcome everybody, we're just figuring out the tech here. Good evening, welcome to our Stitchling Stories. I thought it would be fun to bring on some of our Foundations Revealed members, because we're in, as you know, an open enrollment period right now. And let's see if we can, we're in an open enrollment period now, so you can join Foundations at the moment. So I'm going to put that link in the chat here if I can get to it. There we are. And I will probably repeat that a couple more times. So whether you're thinking of joining, whether you're on the fence, whether you're just here for the party, whether you're just here for the social togetherness, we're not social distancing, we're physically distancing, but we're socially together. So enjoy the party, and we'll have a little talk tonight to some of our Foundations Real members. So first of all, I want to introduce you to Ariana. So say hi, Ariana.
Hi.
The camera will automatically come to you when you speak. So
Awesome.
So just tell us who you are, where you come from, and what you do, because everybody kind of is interested in a different type of sewing or making different kinds of stuff.
Sure. So my name's Ariana Bauer. I am from just outside of St. Louis, Missouri, on the Illinois side, kind of out in the wilderness. I am primarily a cosplay sewer. I actually started sewing when I was 6, got really interested in bridal, did bridal tailoring for a little while, got really bored of that. That got really old really fast, and then got into teaching sewing. As when I worked at my bridal tailoring, they'd noticed that I was rather good at fitting. So I started teaching fitting seminars within, I actually worked at David's Bridal, within David's Bridal in the area, and then got more into the whole teaching side, discovered cosplay, and figured out that that could take my love of bridal evening wear kind of to a whole new level. And so now I get to do all sorts of crazy stuff and go to conventions and teach people and have a lot of fun with sewing.
Cool. So why in particular did you fall in love with sewing in the first place?
I started sewing when I was 6. My grandma made fantastic things. So my mother was a pageant girl. And part of my grandma's thing was my grandma was really interested in Native American and sort of costume herself. She took on Halloween costumes were like a whole effort. Like we had to plan 6-8 months ahead, so much like we do actually for cosplay. And my grandma would make these garments that, you know, could have entered cosplay competitions today. And I just loved kind of the idea behind being able to make my own clothes. I was really into fashion. I actually wanted to be a fashion designer from the time I was old enough to talk. I was the 7-year-old flipping through pages of Vogue instead of other magazines. And so I wanted to be able to make the clothes I saw in the magazines. By the time I was in middle school, I was being sort of, I guess, made fun of and called the weird kid because I was making my own clothes. One of my favorite pieces of clothing I ever made as a teenager, there was a cover of Vogue with these fantastic 1940s inspired wide leg purple wool pants. And my grandma helped me source the wool, and it was fantastic. And I duplicated them down to the penny, which my grandma was shocked at because she didn't know how to duplicate them. And I sort of just kept working through. I melded patterns together. And to me, sewing is sort of my creative lifeblood. I think if I don't do it, I'm not alive. Like it's just a part of me, and it's how I express myself. And I love to sew and make things.
Cool. So how long have you been a member with us? I should have looked this up before.
I think a year-ish.
Yeah, it's not been long, has it?
No.
Okay. So tell us about where you were with your sewing before you joined.
So I'm quite advanced. I did a lot of bridal before I came to you guys, and honestly, if I would have known more, I could have done my bridal much better. I learned a whole lot. So I've always been very interested in corsetry since it is a foundation garment. I've also been very interested in fashion history and theater. In college, I went to school for computer science, but every chance I could get, I would run up. So the costuming books were up on the third floor of our library. And it got to the point where where the theater majors would see me coming and they go, "Don't check out my book." And I started checking out all the books and just going nuts. So I was pretty advanced. I thought I had taken a lot of classes. I'd taken classes with Susan Calgi out in her workshops or her couture workshops. And I needed something new. And I had kind of heard about Foundations Revealed for a while. Mostly it was a matter of money. I hadn't really put forth the effort to prioritize it, because it's not cheap, and we know that, but it's worth every single penny plus more. But when I started needing to focus on corsetry and unusual shaping in my cosplay, because I kept looking and people are doing stuff with foam and things like that. And I said, you know what, historically speaking, we didn't have to use foam and weird things to make these shapes. There's got to be a way to do this to kind of inspired by how things used to get made to make them new. So I really wanted to figure out how to take some of that historical technique and bring it into my cosplay, because, when you look at, for instance, 1700s gowns with the big wide hoops and that, like those shapes still exist in our costumes. They might not be that same exact shape, but we can use the same theory behind them. Yeah. And so what I wanted to do was figure out how to take that theory and mix it with my current sewing knowledge. What I did was open up Pandora's box, and I realized there was so much that I didn't know, because I thought I really knew a lot, because I had been running into brick walls where there wasn't a lot of new stuff to find for me to learn. And I'm a bit of an addict to learning in general. It's kind of my thing. So Foundations Revealed it opened this Pandora's box, and now I have so much more. I feel like I'm almost starting over in the best way, because I'm relearning things that I had taught myself that were maybe not a best practice, or, I had just kind of haphazardly figured out, and connecting all these dots that I had never connected before. And so I think that is kind of, and having the asset of having people to ask, like last week on our call with my writing habit that I'm working on, Luca answered that question, and it was just kind of like, boing, like, without him, I don't know, I would have still been spinning in circles trying to figure out what I was doing. But there's just so much amazing knowledge from so many awesome people, and being able to get that community together, that's why I will never leave Foundations Revealed, because now I feel like I need it, it's my little lifeline.
I love what you said about bringing historical techniques into cosplay, because when you go back and use the historical techniques, it's like they test drove those methods and those shapes for like decades, and they were
And I also love seeing how so much historical technique is really just trial and error, and this thing worked, and whoa, okay, like I love kind of thinking through, like, for instance, Victorian era, we have all this new technology that they were getting into place. So then if you think about it, as far as applying that to cosplay, where I'm not necessarily doing a historically accurate, but I'm kind of applying the Victorian mindset to it, that, make do, figure it out, use the technology you have on hand, go with whatever crazy materials. Because, as I'm learning, they're putting these crazy materials and testing out. Like at one point, spiral steel boning was a crazy material.
Yeah.
And it was like, who was using that? So, I like the idea of bringing that same mindset into today's world. And so it's kind of rocking the boat a little in the cosplay community, I think, in the people that I talk to, because they're like, because for instance, I brought traditional techniques of boning corsetry into foam work. So I've devised a way to, thanks to all of the learning about fusibles, with Barbara's the queen of fusibles, right? Yeah. So, but I got an idea from her to use the fusible to essentially glue foam, like thin foam, onto my fabrics. And so then I could sew it and then I could bone it. So I did this fantastic She-Ra cosplay, and my whole thing was actually sewn together because I don't like glue. I'm not a glue person, I'm a sewer. So I was kind of mixing these brand new techniques with these really old techniques and mixing them all together. And the whole community is like, whoa, you can put boning in a foam piece? And I'm like, yeah, why not? What's
Cool.
stopping you? But you know, I call them the sad Wonder Womans, you know, when they have the sagging, like the rolls, you know, like, so they'll have these rolls like underneath here. And I'm just like, no, no sad, please, please put boning in it. No sad Wonder Woman.
So show us some pictures. Have you got
Oh,
pictures?
okay. Let me share my screen. Actually, I should have downloaded some of my Wonder Woman here. Let's see if I have any. All right. Are you guys seeing my screen okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So actually, this was the corset that I was working on the very first, when I first started Foundations Revealed. I had this satin, this purple satin that I have forever, and I didn't quite know what to do with it. And I decided that I was finally going to make a corset with this purple satin, which of course, everybody knows that satin is like the most painful to work on, especially in a corset. And I decided that I finally had the gumption to do it. And so especially Barbara kind of inspired this one because, you know, she does so much work with applique and with lace. And so I really wanted to kind of take this to the next level. So here's the corset in progress. So all of this is hand stitched on. So I took apart a fabric that was a netted embroidered fabric, took a couple of them apart and put them back together and hand applied this. This is also a back to some of my work. My grandmother loved lace and loved handwork. So she taught me handwork really early on. And it's been a hobby of mine, I guess you could say. So here's with it on. I think the fit is pretty good considering I had not made a corset in like 3 years before I put this one. And this one was kind of redoing it using new information that I had learned. Now I've made this is a Laughing Moon pattern. I'd made this pattern before, but it was really fun remaking it, knowing what I was doing. Now here's the same exact pattern in a different fabric. This was at Dragon Con for the bunny hutch. If you know, so Dragon Con has a costuming track, and every year they do their bunny hutch, which is like a Playboy inspired party. So this was my bunny hutch look. And then here's my She-Ra corset. I did have some in there. So this is all foam from the outside. And then on the inside, let me zoom in a little, is actually a full corset. So this is actually, so all of those lines that you're seeing coming down, those are actually boning channels made from foam.
Cool.
Yeah. And so I also used boning inside of the arm pieces so that they wouldn't fall down. There's boning inside of here. So I actually used Ridgeline boning, which most of us huff and puff about, you know, being kind of like not so great for corsets. But what's cool about Ridgeline boning is you can heat it and it will stay put, right? So I embedded it in between the layers of foam to keep these up so that they don't, so I was able to use thinner foam to work with that. Now, my painting skills are, you know, we'll leave it. I'm not the world's best painter. I'm learning. You know, give me a needle and thread and I can paint anything. But then this is my newest project. This is my riding habit skirt for Lady Skellington. Lady Skellington is a competition piece I am working on for October for Archon, which is one of our local cons here in the Midwest. And so I wanted to take Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas is one of my favorite characters. And I've been trying to figure out how to do a take on it for many years because I didn't want it to be just, I like to mix historical with my costumes. So I wanted to kind of add that element, and I was watching it as I rewatch it about every few months because it's one of my favorite movies. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that make a neat writing habit? So did some research and decided to go with the truly Victorian pattern. It's a late 1890s writing habit. Now I used wool, and most people would just go nuts. I painted $30 a yard wool. Now what I did was I got wool that already had a 1-inch pinstripe on it, and then hand painted over the inch and then painted in the middle. Part of Jack's kind of interestingness on him when you look at his costumes are that his stripes are not even. They're very they have that very hand painted look, and they're not quite perfect. And so this is the skirt. I do have the corset and the camise done. Now I did a little something here. I tend to go up and down in weight, as many of us ladies do. And so I embedded inside of it in the waistband, coming from about 4 inches under here and 4 inches under here is elastic. And I made some openings. And so there's a ribbon tie that goes underneath the placket there. And then that allows me to give a little and take a little in that, since you don't see the waistband anyway, because it's going to be underneath the jacket and you know, the bodice and everything. So I kind of devised my own little haphazard way, which actually turns out to be a somewhat Victorian method. I found extant garments that do have little weird bits on how women, because, you know, let's face it, women have had all of the things that women have, which we go up and down in weight over the course of a month. And it's just not a new problem. And this is something we actually discussed in the Facebook group. And I had a lot of people discussing it, and it was a really interesting and exciting conversation. So that's the majority of my pictures here.
That is ingenious. Yes.
Yeah, and I plan on doing something in the bodice. So I'm going to, let me show you me. Let me stop sharing here so you guys can see me. What my plan is on the inside of the jacket, I'm going to embed lacing from the inside over various parts, probably 3 sets of lacing, so that I can tighten the jacket from the lining just a little bit, so I can distribute that so that I can go in and out, because I'm trying to lose about 8 pounds, but I really need the time to get on this. So I wanted to have a way to sort of shrink it, raise it without it looking on the outside, like, you know, without corseting on the outside per se. So
yeah, lots of comments coming in saying, oh, I love it, clever opening.
Yeah, and then I should have brought down, the only thing I didn't grab was my Rainbow Bright. My Rainbow Bright's actually my favorite. Let me see if I can grab her real quick, because she is, I did a historically accurate German dirndl, and turned her into Rainbow Bright. Let me grab that real quick. See if I can find. I wish Google would like let you search your pictures better. I thought I'd grab that picture too. That's ridiculous. Let me
so
see
while you're looking for that,
we'll come back to that.
Answer me a question while you're looking for it. So for people who, I mean, we have lots of different skill levels of foundation. People have all right from beginners upwards. So for you as a person who learnt from your grandmother, who has worked professionally, you'd kind of expect that somebody in your position would be like, well, I kind of know what I'm doing. What use would this membership be to me? So what would you say to somebody who's kind of got this stuff already and is competent and knows what they're doing? What can Foundations Revealed do for them?
Well, I think what Foundations Revealed is going to reveal how much you thought you knew that you didn't know, how much there is still left to learn, and how community can raise up your skill level. We're never, ever at the top of our game, right? Like, I don't believe you could ever really learn everything and know everything. And I think one of the best parts of Foundation Revealed is you get this chance to learn that you didn't have without it. So you get to see, like, you know, tailoring. I have never learned proper tailoring, and that's something I'm taking on in this in the jacket for this Skellington. And it's something that I've always been really nervous about, because I've never had someone on the other side to go, yeah, you did that right. Or, yeah, maybe you should do this instead. And that's kind of one of the reasons I've been hesitant, is because that's sort of an arena I've never touched before. My husband's been begging me for years to make him a proper jacket. Like, he loves, the really well-tailored suits. And, it's been on the list, but it gave me the knowing that I have this great community and this group of people and mentors, like real deal mentors that I can tag. Like, I can tag Barbara and be like, hey, does my pad stitching look okay? Or is the pattern for this kind of quite right? And I don't feel like I'm alone. And I'm not sort of failing so much all the time. I have this like confidence that I never had before to do these things that were on my wish list that I just kind of pressed off to the side and made excuses why I didn't need to do it right now, when really it was I was afraid to do it because I didn't have that confidence. And so it will give you the confidence to do, we all have that list, right? That wish list, those things that we said we're going to do someday. And deep down, we know that the someday is never going to happen, but now it can happen because I'm not so worried about it. I don't have to figure it out all on my own and then hope I've done it right. I have people, I have teachers and people to talk to, and people to also say, hey, I messed that up too when I first did that. And, hey, I was no good at tailoring at first, and now I am. So, we all have our little areas of expertise, but now I can go outside of that comfort zone and dig in and learn things that I didn't think I was actually going to do because, fear had essentially set in. Even if it wasn't called fear, it was called too busy, because that's what my fear gets called a lot, is too busy.
Yes. I love what you said about having that list that you're going to do someday, because that's a really pertinent thing to say right now, because it's kind of like in the situation we're all in right now, someday is today. The someday has come.
Yeah.
Everything's cancelled. It's like,
Yeah.
now's that time. One of these days is now today. So
Yeah. I got on the internet and I ordered supplies from Bias Bespoke and found some really interesting YouTubers and, kind of went along, and I can always take that back into the community and say, hey, and also what I love is how we share resources, even if it's not a Foundations Revealed resource. The world is huge, and there's this grand opportunity for learning at such a big scale, which means it's really hard to learn. I think the breadth of YouTube means that, and you can pick up a video, and that doesn't mean that person does it right, or that the person does it accurately, especially when you're working towards historical accuracy. Because in this jacket, I want to use it as an opportunity to learn technique. So I want to learn the accurate, the proper way to do it, because there is proper ways. Like with my students, I always tell them you have to learn the rules before you break the rules. So once I've learned this and I've done it, now I can use that in other ways and break it. Like, for instance, adding like with Barbara teaching the pad stitching, she did that video with Bernadette, and she was learning that, and how you can use that to get to shape things. Well, I can shape lots of things in cosplay now in really weird ways using that same technique, because that may not be on the collar, but it might be in a hairpiece. It might be on the bottom of a skirt hem that I want to make it look like it's anti-gravity, So there's all these different ways that I can take what I learned and use it new once I've learned it properly.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So I do have a couple, let me share my Rainbow Bright here real quick.
I love how you have this just creativity that explodes out of you. We can show you one thing and you're just like off on 20 different ways you could use it.
Okay, so here's my Rainbow Bright. Actually, this is interesting because I used horsehair before I really knew how to use horsehair, and I wish I had done pad stitching in this because it just sits a little bit. But this is actually a cartridge pleated apron on the lace. And there's boning in the bodice here. This is a properly, accurately made historical dirndl top. I handmade all the pleating here with a little bit of lace and a little bit of lace there. So it's a combination of efforts to kind of play into the dirndl concept.
It's so cool.
And then one other one I'll show you guys real quick. This is my humbug.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my sister-in-law is Korean, and when they had their first baby and she turned 1, it's traditional to wear hanbok for your first birthday. So I was introduced to this fantastic piece of history that I had never learned about before. I didn't know Koreans had their own independent style of dress, and I was bound and determined to historically accurately recreate one, which actually meant a whole lot of digging. That was mind-blowing amount of digging, and thankfully I have people who can translate Korean for me because everything was in Korean. There isn't much English resources for this. Right. So this piece is the piece of silk on the front here is really fun. That piece of silk was given to my grandmother by my dad's mother, who's Lebanese, when my mother and father got married, and she didn't know what to do with it because it was like very narrow fabric. And there was only like about 1.5 yards or 2 yards of it. So I finally decided to put it to good use in this costume here. The skirt is hand dyed silk in an indigo color because women that had boys were the only ones allowed to wear indigo skirts. I have 2 boys myself. So every piece of this, Koreans are very into color, and every piece of this has a story and or a color behind it. And then this is one of my favorite pieces. So in an effort to upcycle, because I'm always in an effort to upcycle, I had so much white lining from the wedding dresses that I've made that this is actually a poly blend, but I was running short on cash. And so I hand dyed all these to make what's called a mujigi underskirt. So these are so Victorian women had their pretty petticoats. Korean women had these. And then the top is actually made from sari fabric, silk sari fabric that was used silk sari fabric.
Yes, wonderful.
So that's one of my favorite pieces because it was just so, that one actually, both of these have won awards.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. Awards.
All right.
Awards.
Cool. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Ariana.
Thank you for having me.
The range of things that you try. It's incredible.
I'm a try anything girl. I like to just sew all the things.
Cool. All right. So in that case, thank you very much for sharing, Ariana. We're going to move on to maybe Sue.
Okay.
Sue.
Hi.
So why don't you tell us, first of all, where you come from and who you are?
I am in from Michigan, the Metro Detroit area. It's very, very busy usually. Of course, right now it's not. And I've lived here all my life. I've done a little bit of traveling, but mostly a Michigander.
Yeah.
Oh.
Distracted because there's a bee just flew in the window.
Oh no.
Okay, there we go. Very clever bee. Made it right again. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Carry on. So, tell me, Sue, why did you fall in love with sewing? Tell me about your story in terms of sewing.
And I think it mostly goes back to, even though my grandmother did not teach me, she was always busy doing something. She's always latch hooks or always doing something like that. And then life got involved, and then I discovered some historic films, and I was like, oh, I want to wear that. How did they do that? And it was we had a situation where we were celebrating a 75th birthday for a group that I was in part of, and my mom was in charge of an ice cream social. So the year we were celebrating was about 1917. I'm like, oh, perfect opportunity. So I made my first outfit. I needed help with the skirt because I didn't know what it meant by attic copy. It was literally a photocopy of the original directions of original butterwick pattern. Happened to be my size. I was fortunate. I looked at it and went, holy crap, I don't know what I'm doing. So at that point, I had somebody who could help me, but she didn't teach me. She just did it. And so I'm like, it's beautiful, but I want to learn. So I made the Gibson Girl blouse. And yeah, and it was I think it was an excellent first attempt. Excellent. That's where my roots start. And so it's, how did they make it? How did the history go? And things like that.
Just to be able to walk into the history and.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. Okay. So how long have you been a member with us?
Only since the last enrollment. So I'm a new one too. I'm a newbie.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about, so it's fairly recent history then. So
Yes.
how were you feeling about your sewing, and where was your sewing before you joined? So where
It,
were you?
it was getting better, but and I have a friend and mentor that was helping me a lot, but then she was away a lot and she was getting sick, and I'm like, I was like saying to my husband, you know, maybe I should take a college course. Maybe I should do this. And he's like, okay, well, you're the accountant of the family. You can figure that out. I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, but if I went to a college course, I'd have to do their classes and I'd have to do their projects, and I would not be able to do my projects.
Right.
So it was actually, I believe, through Bernadette, her stuff, that I discovered your foundations revealed. And I started looking into it, got on your waiting list, and I was on it for a while because I actually was out of town when you had one of the enrollment periods.
Right.
But then I went in October. And at this point, where I started is we are looking at it as if it were a college course, because with the tuition, that's how I look at it. And it does fit our budget, and I'm able to learn things already. And it just, the resources, tailoring is something I'm not very good at either. And since my husband and I do American Civil War reenacting, I have made a jacket for him, but I'm like, oh, that could be so much better now. I can't wait to another frock coat for him, you know.
Yes.
Pad stitching was beyond my controls of understanding.
Yeah. So you've been able to just, instead of, I love what you say about you can go on a college course, but then you have to do the curriculum for the course. Whereas we just kind of let you loose in the library and let you go for whatever you're
Exactly.
So you can either go
Exactly.
in and find exactly what I want to make this, and you go and find the resources for that. Or you can just go and get lost in the stacks for an afternoon and go like, oh, I never realized you could do that. So
Exactly. The other thing that I really do like about it is that the community that I had been with, and I'm still around these people. It's just, I kind of like don't always share what I'm doing with them, because I get tired of, well, they didn't do that. That was never done. How do you know they did that? And I'm just like, I'm learning something new. Go away. So I stopped sharing with them and started. I really like the Stitchlings group for foundations, because you can throw something out there, and even though I'm a little shy, it's always been positive. It's always been, hey, have you thought about this? Or I see this problem here, and can you show me a picture so I can help you? And the support is just, it's phenomenal. It really is.
Yeah, I love the group. It's wonderful. And we have such a variety of people in there who all maybe know a little bit about a few things here and there. So whatever you ask about, somebody somewhere in the group is like an expert on that, or has studied that for the last 2 years, and they just come in with all the links. And they're like, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this. And you know, even the mentors themselves, of course, have got, you know, it's a resource you can trust. So we like to think that we can take all of the stuff on the internet, the stuff that's out there, and we kind of do the sifting for you. So instead of you going like, well, who do I listen to? And is that right or is that right? And who should I listen to? And where is the stuff? And where is the exact answer to the particular question I've got? No, not that basic general question, this specific bit. And that's what you can get help with. So show us what you've got.
Okay, let's see if I can do this. Maybe I can do it that way. I'm a little bit of an amateur with this, so.
Don't worry.
Okay. All right. I have a few here that I saved on my. Let's see. Can you, nope, I didn't do that right. Sorry, folks, I'm on an iPad, so let's see. Okay. All right. Maybe you can see something in a minute here. Here is, of course, they're all mushed together.
Who else was it who had an iPad? Can you give her?
I was also having difficulty with it.
Okay. So, okay, here is, I always wanted to show you the before picture. All right, I'll show you the nursing one. I wanted to do an 1910 nursing uniform.
Yes.
And a matter of finding it. I had them organized, but of course, when they're under pressure, right?
Don't worry, there's no pressure. They're having a
Okay,
grand
good. Thank you.
We
But,
could not be here at all, and they'd be having a grand old time in the comments. They're just
so that's kind of odd how it's not showing up. So I'll show you the finished product of it. This, all right, there we go. Can you see that?
There we go. Yes.
Okay. All right. So basically what it was, this was another original pattern that was, I liked Sandra Altman. She's got what she calls her attic copies. And this was a Butterwick pattern from 1910.
Yes.
And when I was looking for, being a nurse, I know that they don't have, now they have scrub patterns. Back then they didn't. It was whatever school you were part of, you got it through the school, yada, yada. So trying to recreate was really challenging. So I had originally created this slightly wrong. A friend of mine, and is it Constance McKenzie? She did one. She did a whole 4-part series in foundations. And I was looking at that and I'm like, oh, that's how that's supposed to go.
Yeah.
So that's for the uniform there. Let me see if I can show you a picture of me in it. Oh, I stopped sharing screen. Photos. And then there's this one here where I did it. And it's my interpretation of an American Red Cross one.
Right.
Because I know British nurses, they had the chambray. And in America, we didn't necessarily have the chambray unless you were like in the American Red Cross.
Right.
So at this point, I didn't have my proper undergarments on, but I was checking length and everything like that. And the collar up at the top still needs a little bit of work, but I have found through my Civil War reenacting, there was actually 3 sizes of uniforms. There was too big, too small, and doesn't fit. So this falls under that. So that was one of them that I did that I'm rather pleased with. And if you notice that there's a tuck at the bottom there, I actually had cut it a little bit too short, but I had extra fabric. So I figured by reading those articles and such, how to lengthen it in a logical way where it looked like, oh, you're just shortening it because you're too short for the uniform. So it's all about illusion at that point. So, and then let's see if I can.
I also have to tell you before you show the next one.
Sure.
Constance is in the chat. Constance is in the chat, and she says, "Hello, that's amazing." She says she's made an American Red Cross uniform like yours.
Thank you. And the next thing I'm going to be doing is the apron part of it. I haven't had a chance to get to that yet. I haven't had the correct fabric yet, and I want to do that just right. So let me see if I can find. I've been working on ball gowns, 1860 ball gowns.
Okay.
And I know I've got one that does. Here we go. Here's the before. Of course, went to the wrong page. Okay. All right. So here is a ball gown. Now, what looks kind of funny here is it's on my duct tape double, which actually is in my background here. So, on my duct tape double, I put a leotard because I didn't want the duct tape to get onto my garment. So it looks like she's got a turtleneck going on. So that's just the mannequin. But the sleeves I have here were makeshift because I didn't know how to do them exactly. And I've got like a 1-inch tuck underneath there because I'm like, all right, I got to have this. I need this now. I need to wear it. And so I put it like that. And then again, using different articles, I have, here it is with the correct sleeves.
Oh, nice. Oh, well
Thank
done.
you. Yeah, thank you. And then I've got a picture of it I did do a Bertha, and let's see here, photos again. Trying to see the whole thing. Here's me in the dress. So.
Oh, lovely. Well
Thank
done.
you. Thank you. And it's fun to wear too. It's the first time I had ever worked with silk taffeta.
Yes.
And it was a little scary at first, but Oh, and an interesting little side note, it wasn't in foundations, but somebody commented, I can't remember, it was Instagram or foundations, but my cane that I use for balance, it's on a little wrist thing that puts cords on, and it was originally for a riding crop.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it's an interesting little thing.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I think, let me see if I have anything else. The other one I was working on another ball gown that's like that too. I'm not sure if I have I should have the before and afters in here too. But this one was a silk taffeta. No, that one was a silk taffeta. The other one is the watered silk,
Yes.
which I'm not sure if it's, here is a picture of the bodice on a hanger my husband made for it. That's another little story. But anyway, the other thing that, like I said, I love the support with the group. Nobody said anything about, well, you put it on the wrong side of the fabric. It's you got to put it on the side of the bias. But like, I wanted the water as if the water were dripping down your body. You know, the whole illusion. And I know I've seen originals in the V&A and such like that too. So, but so that one was a fun one to share too.
Yeah.
So
Lovely one. Lots of lovely comments in the chat here. Lovely, truly amazing work. Beautiful. Wow, that dress.
thank you.
So wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank
So,
you.
How do you feel about your sewing now, you think, after having been with us for?
I feel it's really up to my game. I always felt like I was I dabble. I know a little bit of sewing. But even looking at the definitions, even though I didn't participate in the competition this year, it's too close for me. But looking at the definitions of what a beginner and apprentice and things like an intermediate, I'm like, I would define myself slightly higher than having those definitions. I'm actually higher than I thought I was, And I'm looking forward to the next big project's going to be another corset. I've done one, but I had major problems with it. I have a 45-degree curve. And so it's one of those things where you do the one side, yes, I had all different pattern sizes, but I still have the left side digging into me. Well, looking at foundations, I now have the confidence to look at this one I think it's an 1858 patent one. And it has quilting around the hips. And so I'm going to do some padding, probably twice as much on the left side, similar to maybe what Ariana would do with the foam and the illusion with that. I'm going to try to create the illusion of being balanced with the corset, because that's one thing I'm learning more by using foundations. I'm getting more confident with creating the illusion that I'm straight when I'm not. And that's kind of fun. It's just a total illusion.
It's a form of sculpture, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
To take a body that's one shape and make it a different shape.
Yeah, and that's one thing I found very fascinating with Luca describing the historic stuff. He's like, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember exactly how he put it, but basically put padding, put padding there, or they had padding in different places that you wouldn't even realize.
Yeah. It wasn't like you had to fit the clothes of the person as much as create the silhouette you wanted. It was like you were creating the body shape you wanted. They were padding so liberally. And it's kind of a departure to think that way, because we're so used to, in the modern day, we're so used to forms fitting clothes and how your body has to be right. It's like, no, you built the body you want with all the padding and the...
Right, exactly.
Very, very liberating, actually. So,
yeah.
Wonderful to hear. Thank you so much for sharing, Sue.
Oh, thank you.
And being brave with us. So, who shall we go to next? Sophia, tell us
All right.
Tell us where you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm from Orlando, Florida, and currently live in Orlando, Florida. I'm a professional pattern maker, but my hobby has been for, I would say, about 6 years now. It's been historical costumes. Because I was working in the fashion industry before, and I went to college for fashion, but I always had this love of costume and historical costumes.
Yes.
So I think I joined Foundations Revealed in maybe 2016 or 15. I can't remember. It was right after my first costume college that I heard about it.
Yeah. Okay, so, and tell us what so you're very into the historical, it's particularly the historical
Yeah.
interest in that. So tell us sort of where you were in 2016 when you went to that first costume college just before you joined. How were you feeling about your sewing? What were you doing? What did you want to do? And maybe you were a bit frightened to try.
Sure. Well, when I was starting doing historical costumes, I really didn't have resources. I didn't have like a group I was part of, or I wasn't doing, I mean, I'm still not a reenactor. I just mostly do costumes for myself, but I didn't have the community aspect for sure. And then at my first costume college I went to, I was shocked by all these people who were interested in different eras and different styles. And it wasn't a play or a theatrical event. It was something where it was really your hobby is making those costumes, which is something I had wanted to do. And I was doing theater in high school and I kind of moved away from that. So it was a good thing to see this whole other aspect of costuming. Before I joined Foundations Revealed, I definitely didn't, I don't know if I was using the right materials. I think what's happened a lot is I've learned, because I feel confident with pattern making and I feel pretty confident with standard sewing, I think what I've taken away a lot of is those finishing touches, like making your own boning channels and doing things like binding on the straight grain instead of using bias, which I didn't ever consider. But since I've made that change, it's huge. Like my corsets look much better. And things like putting a channel in your bodice neckline and adding a drawstring that you can't see, which I feel like comes from like Luca looking at the Victorian items, has been really helpful because I never considered doing that, especially on a foundation garment or gown. So I think I definitely have learned a lot as far as finishing my items from Foundations Revealed. And again, having the community aspect has been huge for me.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you feel about being in the community? Were you a bit shy joining in with the community? Or?
I think so, a little bit. I feel like, I mean, I'm a kind of outgoing person to begin with, but I feel like I didn't have a group of like-minded people to talk to about my interests, and now I do.
Yeah, yeah. So wonderful. So, and you've entered a competition at least a couple of times, I'm sure, haven't you?
Yeah, I didn't get to enter this year, but I have done it twice.
Yes. And what was that like?
Oh, it was great. I loved it. It was really fun. It's interesting to put yourself out of your normal comfort zone and pick something to fit a theme. And it was the first time I had made the competition last year for the architecture. Was the first time I had made an item that was more fantasy based, but like a historical inspired garment instead of something that was strictly historical. So it's the first time I had done that.
Right. And how did the competition change how you felt about your sewing? Did it build your confidence in any way, or how did it change you in any way?
Yeah, I think it made me a little bit more confident in getting photos taken of myself, that's for sure. And I think it helped in knowing that there was some sort of end goal was really nice.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that, and I love looking at everyone else's work like that. I love that aspect of seeing so many different styles and things that I wouldn't ever consider doing, but I just want to look at other people's work, which I really enjoy.
Cool. Okay. So have you got some pictures to show us of stuff you've
Yes, I do. So give me just a second.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you see my thumbs.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Lots of people saying they're inspired, and this is making me want to run away and try lots of new ideas.
So I'm in the photos I'm going to show you, I'm going to start from the oldest ones and move forward. And I have my one of my competition entries in here. So all right. So this first corset here is one of the things I made before I joined Foundations Revealed, but right before I went to costume college. It was my first entirely hand sewn garment. Now, I still am proud of it because it's entirely hand sewn. It was totally out of my comfort zone, but knowing what I know now, I would do it entirely different. So this is just
okay. That's
something
okay.
I was doing.
The
And then I made the little like bustle pad is just made out of a pillowcase.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I feel a lot more confident and I feel like I have the right materials and knowledge to go forth and make things that are not necessarily more accurate, but that fit better and look better as a final product. Yeah. And then this was my first pair of stays I ever made. And they're made of like a Dupioni silk and have like a China silk binding, which again, I wouldn't do now. Again, I'm not proud of them, but I have changed my mindset a lot.
Yes. I think that's the sign that you're making progress. You come
right.
to the end of a project, and more often than not, you do think, I know how I'd do that differently now. But that's the joy.
Right, exactly.
That's how you stay excited. If you made something and you're like, I've achieved perfection, there'll be no reason to sew anything else. So it's always, and what's the next?
And then this was my first historical garment I ever made, and it was from Janet Arnold, and it was in college. So that's why you get a blurry photo. But again, I would change so many things, and like there's no padding in it, and we just kind of like shoved cotton in there. It was really funny.
But it's an experiment. It's always an experiment.
Right.
So.
And then this was, I think this might have been the first corset I made after joining Foundations Revealed. So, in this one I drafted my own pattern and did the lace insertion. So I felt like I was getting more confident. Again, materials wise, I've changed a lot how I use materials. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah.
And then, so, and then, oh, so this is a before and after. So this was what I made, I think I made this for 2016, and this is a late 18th century outfit, and it goes over my stays, but there's some things I was unhappy about in the fitting. So I actually refit it. So this is my second. So I lowered the waistline and redid the arm size and added the black trim to it.
Cool. You can see the difference.
So that was something that was a takeaway from Foundations Revealed, knowing more about fit and more about like how to place your sleeves correctly. And again, this was learned from not just Foundations Revealed, but other books and classes and whatnot. So I think I learned that I can take my old work and make it better.
Yeah. Do you want to just flick back to the before again? Let's just see that.
Sure. So it's a little bit high. Oh, I'm pointing to my screen as if you can see it. The neckline's a little bit higher. The sleeves aren't quite fitting in the correct location. So I changed that. And of course, I'm not in the same position, so you can't tell as much the difference.
Yeah. No project.
So, and then we'll move forward. So this is a pair of long stays. And now my work isn't strictly historically accurate. So just throwing that out there, like they wouldn't have had flossing, and I used synthetic whalebone on this and stuff. So, but the idea of adding a gathering channel to the top of the cups was something new to me.
Yes.
So that was something I took from Foundations Revealed. And I think this one has the straight grain binding on it too.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's the more common in the Regency ones, isn't it? That drawstring at the top. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Right.
So.
And then let's see. Oh, and this is just a little modern waist cincher I made for myself. And this one was a new idea for me. Is I actually cut this one on my Cricut cutter, and I didn't use, basically I never drew it in real life or used scissors, because I did the whole pattern draft digitally, and then I cut it on my Cricut. So, and then, okay, so this is getting to my competition entry for the architecture theme. So this corset had the busk was hidden, and it had no visible boning on it. So I had done everything on a separate foundation layer that the outer fashion layer then sat upon, and I stitched in the ditch between all my bones to hold it in place.
Yes.
So that's the finished corset.
Fantastic. That was such a great
So now let's see if I have a oh, so this is a 1903 outfit, and I feel like one of my takeaways from Luca was padding and the importance of padding, which I think a lot of people take away from Foundations Revealed is the importance of padding. So my Espen corset has hip improvers underneath it, which is something I had never thought I needed. But then I realized that you really, to get that trumpet silhouette, you have to pattern your skirt and pattern your body to make it more of that Edwardian, early Edwardian shape.
Yes. Yes, you have to create the shape. Yeah. I think that's
so, and then that one, I think, oh, and this is a little like fantasy Swiss waist I made. So, and then that one has the synthetic whalebone at the center front, and I did all my hand sewn eyelets and stuff like that. So I think that's, oh, sorry, a few more.
Oh, go
So
ahead.
this is actually something I've made during our quarantine time. I started this the first week I wasn't working. So, and this is a late teens, early 20s corset because I wear a lot of late teens and early 20s kind of in my everyday life. So I figured I needed a foundation for the more fitted garments of that time. And then just some finishing things. There's the straight grain binding that's like a lot smaller than I was doing before. And I did the ribbon covered garters.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the finished corset.
Oh, fantastic.
So yeah, I'll stop sharing.
Just beautiful. So how long
Thank
have you
you.
been dressing in 1910s, 1920s?
I would say that was actually like the first thing. I probably started doing that around 2013.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's not every day, but I definitely like to incorporate those pieces into my wardrobe. And I feel like it's stuff you can still find that's antique and vintage, that's still wearable and safe to wear, that you're not going to hurt the garment because there's a lot of cotton and linen and things like that.
Yeah. So there's so many people nowadays who want to do the history bounding thing and want to dress more historical every day. But they're always asking, I don't know about you, but I know Bernadette and I both get a lot of questions about how do you get started? How do you get the confidence to do that? How do you? So what would you say to people who are like, would really love to do that, but they kind of a bit...
I would say mix and match, because like a blouse like this, which is from a 1923 pattern, I could wear it to work with like a pair of slacks and it wouldn't look out of place. Or you can wear like an ankle length skirt, and I feel like it's the confidence to be a little bit weird. And once you realize that, oh, I can still be a modern human with modern values and like old things, which is really nice, I think. And I mean, not be worried, like you're going to have days where you wear a jean and t-shirt, or maybe you're not. Maybe you are someone who dresses like this all the time, but to not feel down upon yourself for those days where you're not dressing up.
Yes. Yes. So it comes gradually, doesn't it? Just a
Yeah.
little bit of time.
Oh, for sure. I feel like something I always do is I always wear a little bit of vintage jewelry. So even if I'm wearing like something super modern or fast fashion, which I try to avoid fast fashion, but you know, you still have those things in your closet. I always try and wear a little bit of vintage jewelry, or like I have fun glasses that I like to wear. I mean, I wear them to see, but you know, I always try and have something that's a little bit of my style in those pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like that's the sort of the unseen stage of dressing historically. It's like we all look at the people on Instagram who are like full out doing it and think, how do you even start? But it's a gradual thing. It's a progression. You just do it gradually. So it's good to hear that in between stage does exist. It's like that how you get there. It's not, you don't go from 0 to 100 miles an hour all at once.
Right. And don't be worried about wearing like something 1940s with something 1970s. You can mix and match any era and any decade together and go to a thrift store and buy something for $4. Like,
yeah, you mix it together, and that's the creativity on it, to mix periods and mix influences. So I'm trying to remember what I've asked you and I haven't. I'm enjoying talking to you so much. So what would you say now to somebody who's on the fence a bit about joining?
I think it's a great resource. I think it's really good to have all the articles there to flip through, and you can save them, which is really nice. And I just enjoy when I see the email blast go out to say, oh, we have a new article, even if it's not something I'm interested in or working on. I like to just read them for fun, which is really nice. And then I really like the group aspect because, again, you can get feedback or give people feedback, and it's very welcoming. It's positive, but still constructive, which is nice because there's some groups where it's just all praise, but no constructive advice and no helpful advice. Right. So I think it's really nice to have a group that's meant for making and not for just looking at pretty things or for bashing people. I think it's like the lovely combination of a constructive, advice-driven group.
Yeah, wonderful. It's a wonderful way to describe it. Yeah, I like that we have that sense of being very supportive, but pushing people a little bit as well, and saying that here's how you can make it better. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for sharing, Sophia.
Yeah, no problem.
Really enjoyed. I think people have really enjoyed seeing your work. So finally, we will move on to Laura. And I realise we've got a problem here because I've unintentionally asked 4 Americans. We've had some people from Europe or Australians, and I've got 4 Americans. So apologies that I wasn't very internationally diverse here. But Laura, tell us where you come from and what you do.
Sure. Hi. So is my mic on? You can hear me okay? Okay, great. So I am based in Massachusetts, and I have been sewing since about age 10, taking it seriously from about age 15 on. My background is pretty much in fashion design. I went to school for fashion design. I worked in industry for a couple of years and then went to grad school where I got my PhD in design and then near environment. And now I teach fashion design full-time at a local university here. But I began sewing because of cosplaying. So I have a similar background to Ariana. I've been cosplaying for about 17 years now, and I got into sewing because I really wanted to make my Sailor Moon costumes and dress up as my favorite character. And then once I got into grad school, I started doing more creative scholarship, which is research-based design practice, and submitting my work to juried exhibitions. A big part of that is a big part of my my tenure and promotion. So as a professor, it's kind of the equivalent of getting a paper published. So every year, the International Textiles and Apparel Association has a competition where you submit a 2-page proceeding discussing your original piece of work, the research that went into it, a new technique that you might be trying. And then you submit your images, and then the garments are then displayed and juried by a group of peers. So I started doing that when I was in grad school. And so my work nowadays is half doing that and half doing cosplay. And then just in the last 3 or 4 years, I've started doing a little bit more research into historical practice, mostly because I tend to pick the costumes that have a historical silhouette to them or some historical piece. And then I executed them how I might have interpreted them to be done in modern ways. And then finding out that it didn't quite work. And then realizing, oh, that this historical method is actually the one that works best. And I'll show you some pictures of like what my early historical like mistakes were with these costumes I made that nowadays, with the knowledge that's out there, could have been improved so much better.
I think a lot of people get intimidated by the idea of doing it the way they did it back then.
Yeah, I thought it would be so much fun. I'm like, oh, I can just like glue this together. That'll be fine. It'll last. And like, no, it fell apart, you know, or, oh, I can use this material instead. It'll be fine, but oh, it doesn't press really well, or it's starting to shred and I should have just used cotton instead of this polyester. You know?
Yeah.
So
start going back and looking
yeah. So the other nice
like,
thing,
it worked. Actually, the way they did it, it worked.
Exactly.
Go figure. You know?
I should have known.
Like,
somebody
did
did
for 10 years
first.
and they figured it out. Look at that.
Yeah.
Use that.
Exactly. But like Ariana said, I like doing I like incorporating historical techniques now into my cosplay. Just in the last few years, I've been starting to do a little bit of recreation of historical characters, or my next project's going to be a fashion plate recreation. And it's definitely a departure from what goes on when I'm doing a cosplay costume, because I'm not like trying to necessarily recreate a character, and I'm not just going for the appearance of it. I really like learning the correct way to do it now. Mm-hmm. And it's fun because I can also bring that into other kinds of garment construction. Like when I do my creative scholarship, the things that I take from the historical sewing and the cosplay community, I can then interpret that into wearable art pieces or avant-garde pieces. Yeah.
Cool. So you were already pretty advanced when you joined us. How long have you been with us now?
I only joined the most recent enrollment period, but I've been a lurker on the website for over a year, just going through and reading all the free articles.
Yeah.
And those have been amazing. And it just got to the point where I'm like, oh my God, I really, really want to like get access to this article. And I see the community and the stuff that's out there, and I just had to do it. But it's been really, really amazing and very, very helpful, especially the construction articles and the parts about tailoring and the parts about constructing odd shapes and foundations for inside of couture garments.
Yeah.
That's been great for not only me, but for my students, because I teach, right now I'm teaching a senior class and they're designing their own garments, and some of them, you know, they come up with these really avant-garde silhouettes, or they're like, I have this gown that I saw online and I would love to try to recreate this silhouette. And I might not have ever made anything like that before, but I know where I can get information about it. I'm like, oh, this student wanted to do an overbust corset with cups. I've never done that, but I know that there's an amazing article about it on Foundations Revealed. So then I was able to pull it up and walk the student through, like, here's how they did this and here's how they did this. So it helps in that I want to be a jack of all trades and know everything, but I don't necessarily have the time to do all that research.
Yes.
So that's been a huge, huge help.
Yes. That's one of the things I love about it, is that you can have, everybody has an area that's kind of their favorite and they get to know better, but then you can have a crazy idea about something completely departure from that. And you feel a bit intimidated because you don't want to have to just go into like do months of figuring it out. But it's like, there'll always be, I like to think that after 12 years, there's going to be something somewhere in the archive that's going to get you started and at least show you how to get started and where to go for more, and to give you the bones of it at the very least, if not tell you just here's how to do it, and you're there. So yeah. So
Absolutely.
So also I noticed that with most of the people we talked to tonight, you were all quite experienced already. But I know we have people who are joining, who are thinking about joining, who are much less experienced, who might not have really done a lot of sewing before. We've even got a few people joining this time who are complete beginners. So if you're much earlier in your journey, they've been asking, is this really right for me? I feel like I'm seeing all these people doing amazing work, but I'm not that level yet. So I want to learn a bit more before I join, and then I'll join. So what would you say to them?
I think it's getting that the information about how to necessarily start and how to if you set yourself a goal of this is something that I really want to learn how to do, there's nothing better than just flooding your brain with the knowledge on how to get there. And I think if you're starting out, maybe just look at the historical stitching articles and practice making a sampler of the different kinds of hand sewing. Maybe you start with a waist cincher and you learn how to put boning channels in, or you start with maybe playing with the different types of boning that you're able to get access to. I think with the kind of articles that are available on there, there's something at every skill level that you can use to apply to whatever projects that you're working on. Even for something as simple as, making a chemise or making a pair of bloomers. There's things that we talk about in the workshops that you can apply to anything. I especially love the skirt workshop that we had a few months ago, looking at the way that the waistband was attached with like constructing it fully and then whipping it down. Never heard of that before. Never heard of it. And it was like a light bulb that like, oh, that's how you reduce bulk. And
because why would you have all that bulk inside the waistband?
Yeah, like 2 weeks later, a student's like, I didn't want to do this way because I was afraid of it adding bulk. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? You could do it this way.
Yeah. It's like, you have those moments where you're like, boom, I'm never going to do it that way again.
Yeah. And I think looking at the historical construction methods, where some of it is actually much simpler to do if you're not afraid to sew by hand. Things like whipping down seam allowances is actually easier to approach than trying to learn how to use a serger or doing something like a Hong Kong seam finish. And you don't have to use machine finishes to make a nice garment. And I think that's something that a lot of students are not told when they're in school. It's, you know, and I think having that community with all the different kinds of backgrounds to encourage you is also really helpful.
Yeah, I love the kind of creative energy we've got in the group. Whatever level that you're at, even if you're just starting out, there's so much like creative juice and just exuberant enthusiasm in there that you're like, yeah, I'm gonna do this now. I'm gonna try this and this, and you just have that. You get that energy on board that kind of crowds out all the fear of, oh, I don't know whether I can do that. It like the enthusiasm just carries you along. So I love that about it. I love that about this group of people, that you can get all these different people at all different skill levels and all kinds of different interests. The cosplayers with the historical makers and the corset makers and the couturiers and the tailors, and they're all getting together and all cross-pollinating ideas. It's just this wonderful melting pot of creativity. So I hope people are seeing that in this call tonight. You can feel that enthusiasm coming through. So show us some pictures.
Okay, so I have a lot of work, but I'm going to kind of focus on first, like my approach to corset making over the course of my career, I guess, and then examples of my creative scholarship work versus historical versus cosplay. But I won't like show absolutely everything. My portfolio is easily available online. So kind of funny story. The very first quote unquote historical inspired thing I ever made was my my senior prom dress, which I made from a pattern. And it was let me share my screen first. And I wanted something that was kind of 18th century inspired. So it wasn't too much different than what the pattern looked like, but I made some very poor construction mistakes. So this was my senior prom dress. So that, can you see it okay?
I can see the whole menu of lots of pictures.
Okay, let me change the screen sharing.
You need a different
different thing. Okay, share screen. Okay, can you see that?
Let's see, just a moment. Yes, there we go.
Okay, perfect.
Oh,
so this dress had the pull-ups on the side that were tied underneath. It had a ruffle on the bottom, but I boned this with the buckram covered hoop steel.
Oh wow.
That like doesn't bend.
It's heavy duty.
Much. You know, the pieces were only about this long, so they were like wearing you know, fence posts.
Yeah.
And I didn't round off the edges or anything. I stuck them in the bodice, and then I wore it for the remainder of the night. I went bowling in it, and and toward the end of the night, it was just poking right through my boning channels, which were made out of lining material.
Oh,
yeah. So not good. So I still have the dress. Yeah, it was. I apparently just thought that you know, oh, it's steel. That's exactly what has to go into there. No, not quite. But
it's a start. It's a great dress.
It was definitely a start. And I've learned a lot since then. Let me see. Oops. Pull up the next guy. Just a couple years later, in 2007, I did a sort of Gothic Lolita style, not quite Gothic, sweet Lolita style 18th century dress. Sorry, as I pull this up. This was the first time I had made stays that I put on underneath this dress.
That's so cute.
And the stays were from a pattern, and then the dress was an alteration of a simplicity pattern. I really loved the sack back look, but I didn't know how to make the sack back. So what I did was I made it detachable. So this is the back view of the dress. So it has just it just snaps on in the back because I didn't realize that they were all the same piece.
That it was all part of the dress.
Yeah. Yeah, I've since read the American Duchess books, and I know that that's not how it's done. But at the time, like this was my solution for it, and that was again a learning experience. I would really love to remake this someday.
But you got the look.
Yeah.
For somebody who hadn't done that before, you saw the look and you found a way to, you've used your creativity and found a way to get the look. So,
exactly.
It's all
And then just a
process of trying something, assessing the result, and changing course. Okay, I see how I'd do that next time. So,
yeah. And then a couple years later, I did a very big cosplay costume. It was something I had worked on for many years. It is a character from the show Paradise Kiss, and there's this iconic gown during the series that's made up of all these hand beaded flowers with a gigantic cage skirt, and then the accompanying gentleman that she's with has a frock coat. And so I made all the undergarments for it. So I did a cage skirt, petticoats. I altered a corset piece, and that is this one. So can you see that?
No, we can still see your pink dress.
Oh, let me share this again.
If you stop sharing the one you've got on start, there you go.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, wow. That's a showstopper.
Thank you. So that one, I didn't use a pattern for the skirt. So I had a lot of issues with sizing of the panels of the cage.
Can you zoom in a bit at the top?
Sorry?
Can you zoom in a bit at the top?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ooh, come on, go ahead. There we go. Okay. Nice. So all of these flowers are all hand beaded individual pearls. And this is all layers of lace on the skirt. But the cage skirt itself, I used grosgrain ribbon that I directly glued onto the hoops.
Oh.
So yeah, I was like, oh, this is going to be way easier than like making channels. And it lasted a few years, and then it slowly started falling apart. And is now I've now recycled it into a bustle. So there was a great amount of learning experience that came with this. So while I was confident in my sewing abilities, the foundation parts of it, I had still needed a lot of work to get to. And then the men's jacket here, which was based off of a commercial pattern. I did all free motion embroidery on that. So that was done with my straight stitch machine, and I just like moved the fabric around as I did all the trim. And again, something that at the time I didn't use the right cut for it. It's got some very interesting princess seaming happening, but it's nowadays I would probably go in and do something a little more true to the century that it's supposed to be coming from. Yeah.
Again, it's a step on the road.
Sorry?
Again, it's a step on the road.
Exactly. So that was about 10 years ago. So that's from 2009. My more recent work, if I look at my creative scholarship pieces, one of the first ones that I had done was what I call an autobiographical design. Let me pull this up for a second. So I used this design method of looking at garments that you've worn in your past that make you feel certain positive feelings or positive emotions, and basing new designs off of things that made you feel special. It's a method that was coined by an architectural designer, an interior designer, on how to design rooms. So if there was a room from your childhood that had a certain color or a certain lighting ambiance or a certain kind of use of materials, when you're building up a new space that you want to use for certain, like a studio space or an office space or a bedroom space, looking back at the things that you worked with in your past to then design new garments, new spaces. I applied that to garment design. So I looked at clothes that I wore when I was a teenager, cosplay costumes that made me feel really good and positive, So corsets were a big part of that. I really loved wearing corsets when I was in high school. I had a pair of jeans that I had all my friends sign with markers and color in like while I was wearing them. And I wore those all the time. And then I was also into Lolita fashion, which I loved wearing like little short bustle dresses with like ruffles all down the back. So I designed this new garment that incorporated a little bit of everything that I had loved of those garments into something new. So this is what I had. Share this guy. So this is a corset, a jacket, and a petticoat.
Oh,
You see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the jacket has all these layers of painted ruffles on them.
Yes.
Every single ruffle is done with a different painted motif. The very bottom ruffle I had sent out to my friends and family across the country in sections. So I sent one pattern piece to back home because I was living on the West Coast at the time. I took a piece of it to a wedding and had it out during the reception, and my friends and family painted on the ruffles. I had one of my classes, my students painting on it. So I have this like little snapshot of all the people that that were dear to me incorporated into this garment, and it served as the base layer, the foundation piece to my garment.
So there's pieces of everyone you love in there.
Yeah, this is a very special piece. And then I made a this is a close-up of the corset and the top of the jacket.
Beautiful
So the corset has all this hand beading on the top end of it.
That's a lovely silhouette you've got there.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
But again, with this, there's still a lot of things that I would adjust, particularly the fit of the corset. This was my first time doing a corset that had a bra built into it and with really big shaping around the bust. And I still didn't quite get it right. You could see it's standing off of my chest a little bit, which I have since been able to fix that with the new knowledge that I have.
Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you.
It still looks fantastic.
And then my most recent work has been in a series of creative scholarship pieces that were inspired by the Oregon coast. I'm going to show two of them. First is this is a large art piece. My first piece was based on seafoam that I witnessed when I was living in Oregon at the time. I had went out to the coastline after a big storm, and there was this huge inundation of really smelly seafoam that the winds were blowing really, really crazy, and it was blowing all over the place. It was whirling up in like little spirals. And that stuff smells terrible because it's mostly made up of decomposing sea life. But it was also really beautiful. So I wanted to try to recreate that in a garment. So this is, this is a couture piece. It's very McQueen inspired. It's another another one of my favorite designers.
I was thinking of the oyster dress when you.
Yes, and the oyster dress was a huge inspiration for this. I really loved the way that it moved.
Yeah.
So this is the seafoam piece.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's made up out of the dress base is felt, and then it's got hand sewn puffs of batting with organza and then seashells. So in between every one of the little puffs are like little seashell sequins and like wooden beads. So it's kind of like it's been all washed up.
Yeah.
And then it has this like really kind of gross wet texture to it. And then it has these little hanging puffs that are hanging with fishing lines. So when the dress is in motion, it kind of like dances.
Wow, that's incredible. Do you have a close-up?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Maybe not this picture isn't great, but I have other pictures of it.
I'm seeing all the comments coming in. There's a lot of wows and woes and holy cow. Oh my.
Thank you.
Laura, how much did that weigh?
It weighs about 20 pounds.
Wow.
It's heavy. I mean, it's not as heavy as actually a bustle gown that I made recently. It's heavier than it, but it's just massive and it doesn't collapse very well. So when I ship it, I have to like force it into a tote bag, into a tote box, and then like zip tie the box closed.
It must be
Okay,
kind of
here's a close up of it.
Oh my gosh.
So there's all these little things on the inside of it, and then all these little pieces that hang off.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yep.
Oh, look at that. That's so pretty though.
Right. So I was going for a very like oddly pretty, beautiful, but not.
Oh, you succeeded. That is fantastic.
Thank you.
Very sort of thought-provoking, and it's like an art object because you're thinking about how am I responding to this? Is it beautiful? Is it strange? Is it whimsical? It's
That's
wonderful.
exactly what I was going for.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Thank you. So I have 4 garments in that series. The other ones that I did were a fish bone, like a fish vertebrae, which I did a digital printed sort of crazy asymmetrical thing.
Yeah.
I did an oyster shell, which is very different from a queen's oyster shell. I made that piece out of warbler.
Yeah.
And then I just finished a version of it's a menswear piece with a leather jacket, a kilt, and a printed shirt, and that's inspired by bullwhip kelp. So I made this leather jacket that looks like it's got kelp sitting on his shoulders and wrapping around.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting set of series of pieces, and now I have new stuff to work with. So I mean, I could go on, but I don't want to inundate
it's fine.
too
It's
much.
fascinating. We've got such a diversity of different emphases. I mean, Ariana with the cosplay, with the sort of the superheroes and the She-Ra and the Rainbow Bright and not that Rainbow Bright's a superhero. I suppose you'd call Rainbow Bright a superhero in a way. And then you've got the historical and the 1860s and then the 1910s and then we come to you and your fashion design and really art objects and going in a very avant-garde direction. It's just, this is what I love about our community, that there are so many different directions that people are taking this stuff. And you get
I do kids and bridal too, Cathy.
Sorry?
I work on kids stuff a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my boys are also semi-pro cosplayers. My youngest actually does his own work now. So, and he won in a recent competition. So yeah, we do. It's interesting and challenging maneuvering things that into children's wear.
Yeah. Yes, that's fascinating. So if anybody has any questions, do type them in the chat and we'll try and keep up with them. We've got about a minute lag here, so we'll sort of keep chatting for a minute until something comes up. I did have one question come up earlier, which I would ask whoever would like to answer. Felicia said, how old is too old to start? I feel I may have waited too long.
I'd say it's never too old.
What did you say, Sue?
Never too old.
Never too old.
No, do your hands work? Yes. Can your eyes see? Yes. Okay, you can sew.
Yeah. Perfect answer.
My grandmother sewed until she literally could not pick up a needle. She was about 2 weeks before she passed away was when she stopped sewing.
Wow. There you go. That's a good example. And how young is too young? We have a lot of people now. It used to be that we had a membership that was pretty concentrated in the 30s, maybe a few in the 20s, maybe a few in the 40s, 1 or 2 outside of that. But we have a much wider age range now. And we have quite a few people in their teens, high schoolers who are wanting to join. So would you encourage them to join too?
I would say it's good for high school and above. I say we're a little, the way middle schoolers and younger learn, they need a little more of a different sort of mentality. Some of the articles will be difficult for them to read because their attention span is kind of, on the so-so side. If you have a middle schooler that does you know, have that ability to in vocabulary and learning style, then it would even work for them too. But definitely high schoolers for sure.
Yeah. Good answer. Okay. So also Mary says, any tips for getting into the community and meeting people?
Just
Which community?
just jump in. Jump in and you'll be supported. That's what I did. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah, have a project, post something up and ask a question. That's kind of where I got started, and just comment on other people's stuff, even if it's just, oh, I wish I knew how she did that. Instead of saying I wish, ask.
Right. Right. And I like to encourage anytime, I mean, it's my nature anyway to encourage, you know, I a lot of times put beautiful, gorgeous, I love your work. And so that's another way to just to kind of like get a little bit more confidence out there too. Because it can be scared on the other side of a screen. You know, you don't know what they're seeing, you know.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to say hi.
Yeah. It's just
I myself have to get over that. Like I get starry eyes, you know, looking at people's work like, oh my God, they would never give me the time of day. But like everybody's very similar. Like we all share the same passion.
Yes. Cool. Okay. I'm just collating questions as we go. Anybody have any insight on how would one deal with fabrics that don't go well with the skin? I think this person says she's got I didn't take the name, so apologize.
I would use Wonder Under. I love Wonder Under.
Well, the
So-
rest of the question was, my skin is quite sensitive and can't handle very rough fabrics.
Been lining. My grandma taught me actually when I was very young, because she made a lot of babies' garments. And babies have really, really sensitive skin. Like they get scratched from everything. She used a lot of cotton batiste as lining, French seams, and make sure that anything that you have is really well sewn down. You can cover seaming areas that if you can't line it with additional, she used to basically make bias from soft fabrics and cover seams and hand stitch those in. But yeah, I mean, I always handled it with lining.
You just have a soft, as long as you've got a soft fabric.
Yeah, a really soft, something that you like under your skin. I know for the baby stuff, I've always used very fine cotton fabrics.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Joanne says, I've never sewn. With what should I start?
Let's
take that one.
You want me to go?
I can chime in.
Yeah, because I have where to start too. I usually start people with something, first of all, something that you're not going to be precious with. Like that's really important, that you're not precious with whatever it is you're making. It's going to be on the wonky side. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be yours. Pick something simple that has directions. Like I don't advise people draft their own things as the very first thing they ever sew, because then you don't know if what you're doing is working out. I know that a lot of the teens that I teach, we do something like a simple gathered dirndl style skirt, like with an elastic waist, and just it teaches you you've got a front, you got a back, you've got a hem, and you've got a waistband. Simple, really, really small projects, and just make something that's cute and you like. I mean, that's where I start my students with, but it's got to be simple to just get the basics down, because you have so much to learn and manage when you just starting a sewing machine, figuring out what fabrics are, you know, and don't start with something stretchy.
Yeah.
Never start with something stretchy.
Away from the stretch fabrics, yes.
At least for day one.
Okay, so finally one more at a different stage. I'm a quilter, says Rachel. What would you suggest as a first project for somebody with decent sewing skills from quilting but has never done clothing before?
I've seen a very unique skirt where it was all squares, patchwork, and they made a skirt out of the patchwork quilt. It wasn't true quilting, it was just sewn together. Well, it was a very clever thing, so you could still use your cabbage and make a neat skirt. That was unique.
I've seen quilters and talked to quilters. It seems to me that quilters have the most trouble with fitting. They're very accurate sewers. So they know their sewing machine really well. Honestly, I am not the most accurate sewer. Like I've tried doing some of the really tiny piecework and I'm just cursing and throwing it all the way at the end. So I'm always like starry-eyed when I look at quilters and what they do. But something that I actually did for a local quilt shop was a kimono style garment. It was actually just a short jacket and we just did it with squares and it doesn't require much fitting, but it gives you the idea of it. So it seems to me a lot of quilters, they struggle in the whole idea of the fitting. So, but they know how to do sewing. So I start them with kind of more basic garments that don't need as much fitting until you kind of get the idea. But they're usually, if you've quilted, you know, when you're proficient with your machine, it's just a matter of learning to take a flat thing and making it dimensional because, you know, we're three-dimensional beings.
Yeah. I suppose so, yes, you're going from 2 dimensions into 3. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's a great idea actually with the kimono because of the rectangular shapes.
Yes, yeah.
Into making something 3D, that's a great idea.
And you can usually inset some pretty neat designs for the quilt class we did. We did a back on the very back piece. We did a quilt block embedded into it. And then or applique on basically to kind of give it a little bit of a quilt feel.
Yeah, fantastic. Great advice. Well, thank you very much, everybody. So,
Thank you.
finally, any parting words, anybody? Any thoughts to end with on encouraging people in general with their sewing? People maybe stuck at home, a little bit short on courage, and somebody stepping forward and really using this time to do something fun. Laura.
Sure. Just general kind of word of advice, and this was reflected, I think, in the last call that Foundations Revealed did with how to like level up. Whenever you're doing something new, try to challenge yourself with at least 1 or 2 new techniques. So don't necessarily feel that, you know, you have to be trying the hardest thing ever right away. When you're sewing and making new projects, it's okay for you to fall back on stuff that you know, but try to make a spin on that new thing to help you learn something new. Whether that's, you know, a new kind of seam finish that you're doing, maybe you're making the same shirt pattern that you've made a million times for yourself because you know it fits. Do a different seam finish on it, or make it out of a fabric that you've never worked with before. If you're looking for, you know, new interesting hand techniques, try doing a tiny little bit of embroidery on your new piece. Do it in a little sampler. Try not to bite off too much right at first, especially if you're new or you're just, you know, getting into doing historical sewing in general. Start with the smaller stuff first. Don't feel like you have to jump right into doing your outer fancy bodice. Get the practice with doing the undergarments first. You know, things that aren't as scary, that people won't necessarily see if you have a couple mistakes.
Good advice. Yes. Anybody else?
Well,
sorry,
right
Sophia,
now
you go.
I would say,
Sophia, go on.
sorry, I would say right now what I did, because we have, well, I mean, obviously there are people who are still working, but right now I'm not personally. So I would start with organizing what you have. So I organized all my fabric and took all my trim, and I was like, well, what can I get creative with? And how can I make what I have at hand work for right now? There's a lot of pattern companies that do digital print at home patterns, and just like, I feel like feeling like you can do something casually and for fun and for yourself right now is really nice.
Yeah. Something, yes. Right at this point where we're in a very strange time right now.
Yeah.
I think one of my mentors called it liminal time. She's a psychologist, and it's really a sort of, it's the time between. Like things are where the past is the past and the future is the future, and things are kind of not going to be the same when we come out of this period. So we're kind of in this in-between time where we're kind of deciding who we're going to be when we come out of this period. So it's a good time to gather what you have around you and see what you can use to make something to soothe you, to use the sewing to soothe you, and to give you something to distract you and move forward.
Cathy, can I say one thing? just
Oh, yeah.
don't be precious with what you do. And what that means is basically having made something, even if you end up wanting to throw it in the garbage can, you have learned. You have put your two hands to work and learned. And there is nothing better than the act of doing to progress you forward. So as long as you are learning, it's okay to have stages. It's kind of like I always tell people, when you cook, if you learn to bake and you've never baked before, you don't expect to get a cake that's like a wedding cake with 10 tiers and all that. No, you just hope that you have a cake that comes out of the oven and that's edible. So it's the same thing with our sewing. You know, when you're first getting started, or even when you're trying something completely new and you already know what you're doing, or you hope you know what you're doing, it's okay. So don't be precious with it. Just practice, just work. It's only fabric. It's only an object. You can always make another one. This is not the last thing you'll ever make. You can always go again and take what you learned and try again. I know that I was working actually this past week on a romper for my nephew. And I should know how to make this stuff like in my sleep. I put in my buttons on the wrong side that I had wanted to, because I'm tired. It's exhausting. I have two teenagers at home who don't want to do their schoolwork. And you know what? You just have to breathe through and go, okay, that's fine. I can make another one. No big deal. I'll just do it again. It's okay. I learned.
So it's helpful always just to take the pressure off.
Uh-huh.
Do it for the love of it, not because you feel you have to, or to put pressure on what the outcome should be. It's always best to just let it be what it's going to be.
I would add too, just do one thing at a time. Don't look at the huge project, break it down in stages. I was helping a friend of mine. She wants to make a dress for the turn to celebrating the Americans getting, I don't remember what happened in England, but we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment of women getting the vote. She's trying to put together an outfit for that. And she was like calling me up and saying, well, what do I do at this stage? I don't understand. And so I was helping her through it. And she said, finally, I just have to I said, just put it down for a day, come back to it tomorrow and look at it. And then she had that, light bulb moment. I know what to do now. So if you look at the whole big picture, you're going to get yourself overwhelmed and you say, I can't do that. That's never going to be done. Well, don't make a self-fulfilling prophecy. Just do teeny steps.
Absolutely, one step at a time.
Yeah, when I was in college, one of my programming teachers, he told me, he goes, it's the KISS principle. It's keep it simple, stupid. Because you tell yourself, you're like, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. And, just baby step. I actually have people write down all the things and then pre-organize it because I'm an old-fashioned list maker.
Cross that stuff off.
Exactly. And it feels so good.
Perfect. Fabulous advice. Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, for being so generous with your time and with your knowledge and with your experience. Thank you for telling us your stories. I hope everybody has been enjoying this in the chat. I've been reading as much as I can whilst also listening to you, which is not easy to do. But I hope you've all enjoyed and felt inspired to move forward with your own sewing. Foundations Revealed is open for enrollment for another day and a half. Is it Monday today? It's Monday today.
Today's the 6th, yeah.
I'm not going to tell you times. There's a different time for everybody, but it's midnight Pacific on Wednesday, which is 8 a.m. Thursday for me in England. So that's two and a half days, two days and a night. So if you're interested in joining, the link I think I put in the chat a while ago. I will try again. No, it's not. I haven't got it copied. I will put it in again as I continue to attempt to talk at the same time, which is really not easy at all. Copy link. Let me go back to there. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to Ariana. And thank you to Sophia and Laura and Sue. And we will see you inside Foundations Revealed. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think I'm getting better at stopping this thing. It should stop if I just hit end meeting. Fingers crossed. One night it didn't. So we are ending now. If this keeps going on YouTube, just know that we're done here. Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.